welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. As we've had over the last month, a full agenda for today's podcast, and we welcome all our listeners. Obviously, the biggest story coming up very quickly is 9/11, 20 years later. Where are we? Are we safer? Are we less safe? Prestige in the world, economically, and even Michael Moore, the noteworthy documentarian, who's a noteworthy liberal, super liberal, came out today and said, looks like bin Laden won. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
Oh, there's no question that bin Laden won. I mean, Biden keeps framing this as we are leaving Afghanistan. This was not leaving Afghanistan. This was surrender. And unfortunately, thanks to a whole bunch of different policies, pulling out of Afghanistan, basically an open border up until last week, defunding the police, we are definitely not as safe as we were on September 10th, 2001.
No question about it. We're also, security does depend in part by a country being united. We're more divided than ever. We're more fragmented. And also, I think we have, I know I do, a lot less faith in our government over the last 20 years. You look at the knuckleheads that Biden has in his cabinet, and everywhere from Secretary of State to Miley Cyrus, the chief of staff there. Not impressive. I have no faith in them. They couldn't prevent someone from going swimming after hours at a resort. What do you think?
No, these are not the best and brightest. And, the contrast for me especially, it stands out so much because, I'm a New Yorker. I was born in New York. I was in New York on 9/11. In fact, I was a political consultant. 9/11 was actually the New York City primaries. And I was working with candidates. And, I remember every aspect of that day. But even more, I remember September 12th. Being in New York City on September 12th, you never felt such unity, such compassion, and yes, such anger, but it was everybody's anger was, focused in the same direction. It was amazing how people came together. And to think 20 years later, we are so fragmented and so pulled apart that we actually essentially forgot what happened on 9/11 and surrendered.
And turned inward. I think Yep, I agree. That's a great analysis. We've actually taken the appropriate anger at others and we've turned it inside into ourselves. We're divided.
We're very divided.
Yes. So that's something very sad, very interesting. Another situation I'd like to about 9/11, I'd like to ask you your thoughts on. I think our listeners would be appreciative of that. Biden is increasingly coming under verbal attacks. He was in at a rally or whatever. I don't know what you'd really call it, a rally at an event in New Jersey, and people were basically yelling at him. And of course, he had no response. And then another very interesting thing is that there was leaks that his staff actually mutes his microphone because they don't want him ever going off script. So my real question, how it relates to 9/11, is how embarrassing. I mean, George W. Bush, okay, whatever, but at least he was coherent. I mean, after what Biden did, it's hard to instill any patriotism at any kind of event that he's going to be at. I mean, coherent or incoherent. What do you think?
It's true. I'm very torn on this because as an American and as somebody who is absolutely infuriated by his actions in relation to Afghanistan, I don't think he has any business being at a 9/11 ceremony, especially after surrendering. On the other hand, I especially want him to be at ground zero because I know the media will cover it live and the crowds will shout him down
You
and
are
the media
correct.
will have no choice but to show it.
Fantastic. I'm 100% on board. Yes, what he did in Afghanistan was despicable. And then he comes out and does the victory lap. And I actually have more than a few of liberal friends, and even they were saying, "What the heck was he yelling at?" Like, I know it's a sign of dementia, but he's yelling and kind of almost like it was completely out of touch, incoherent,
He's
calling it a
completely out of
marvelous
touch.
undertaking.
Yeah, he's completely out of touch. And unfortunately, it looks like his whole administration is out of touch because there are groups of retired veterans who are in Afghanistan getting people out where our own military won't. And the State Department is trying to claim credit for getting these people out. And these groups are saying not only is the State Department not helping us, they're hindering us.
You're absolutely correct. I heard the exact same thing. Uh, Again, if we had a real free and involved press, we have at least 500 Americans, and some of them, I believe, even high school students or college students. If Trump left those people behind, are you kidding me?
Oh, the media would be banging the drum every minute of every day. But because Biden is their boy, they're trying to push it like, oh, well, that was 2 weeks ago. We have to move on. It's like, no, you know what? The American people are not moving on, and they're going to make sure that neither does this administration.
I think it's a great comment because I find it fascinating. I really do. I'd like you to elaborate on it a little bit more, if you will, because I see my liberal friends not even buying the line that it's yesterday's news. How does that happen? Because they're watching it. So are they getting news sources from other media, or how's it happening? Or are they just realizing it's bullshit?
People are just realizing that this whole situation is bullshit. Pelosi is trying to push the narrative, going, "Oh, we have to move on to infrastructure. We have to move on." The Democrats are doing their best to put it behind them because they need a win. The fact of the matter is, the American people, even except for the furthest left, they have separated from the politicians. They're going, no, no, no. We are not moving on from this. There are still American citizens. And the administration is saying, oh, there's maybe 100 people. Meanwhile, those veterans groups that are on the ground are saying there are thousands of people left there.
Well, I think this story this situation has a lot of legs, and I think it further devalues outlets like CNN, who, by the way, we've talked about it before. We don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's still very noteworthy and newsworthy. The whole summer, they only went over 1 million viewers like twice. Even the esteemed Anderson Cooper, which just he looks so erudite all the time, but he's basically just a political stooge. But he was the only one that crossed it. I mean, horrible ratings.
Well,
600,000. What are you, crazy?
I will actually predict that both CNN and MSNBC's ratings will drop further if they try to leave the Afghanistan story behind. And MSNBC is already trying. People know this story is ongoing. And if CNN and MSNBC refuse to cover it, they will change the channel and go somewhere that is.
I would agree. Just real quick, not to belabor a point. MSNBC, because you have real, basically drinking the Kool-Aid kind. I mean, that's not even it started out, I actually used to watch it 20 years ago. It's unwatchable. It's not even, you can't even consider it a news outlet. I mean, like I said, Rachel Maddow was sued, and they said, well, anyone who watches that basically knows it's fabricated. So that speaks for itself. On a more serious note, we have a new MU variant And
Yeah, the MU variant was originally discovered in Colombia. It has now been found in 49 states.
nice. And on that same note, I believe infections, and comment on this. CNN last summer, you couldn't watch it without the death clock, 200, 300,000, okay? There's no death clock, yet infections are up like 400%.
Yes, infections are up. And this is something that people need to understand. The vaccine does not prevent infections, it keeps it from being serious. So, aside from the vaccines, we also have remdesivir, which has been doing a fantastic job as a treatment. So, yes, ICU beds are being used. People are being infected, but people are not dying from it anymore.
Okay, but the one of the takeaways is everyone talked about Trump, his awful handling of the pandemic. If Biden had the brunt that Trump did, pre-vaccine, we'd be in a lot worse shape. This guy he doesn't even have an FDA.
No, he has no FDA commissioner.
And that's one of the reasons people didn't take the vaccine,
right?
Because they said it was not FDA approved.
Right?
How dumb can you be?
And on top of that, the top 2 FDA officials have left the agency because Biden is pushing these booster shots, and there has been no data submitted to the FDA to justify a third shot. So the Biden administration's going off on his own. The FDA, their leadership has left because Biden, we're going to follow the science, has refused to follow the science.
Is he really capable of following the science? That's a whole different show.
Oh, I'm sure he's not, but somebody in his administration should be.
Yeah, one of the heavy hitters, I'm sure. I think it will be interesting, sad, but I think as he gets thrown into these situations that you can't predetermine, you can't have a script. Like he's going to have to address the nation on his strategy for COVID. It's probably going to be much watched TV. You must tune that one in because anytime he's off script, it doesn't go well, which is scary unto itself. But I do agree with Fauci on this one. I don't think it's really appropriate. I know it is America. Football is football, but having 110,000 people at a Florida State game, and it could be a little dicey. Your thoughts?
Is it going to cause people to get infected? Probably. Yes. Is that necessarily a bad thing? No, because a study came out from Israel showing that being exposed to the COVID virus actually creates 13 times the immunity of the vaccine.
So actually, you have a very good point because the people at the game are also very young, so they, already aren't really susceptible to major illnesses. I mean, ramifications, complications. So then it creates more of a herd situation, possibly.
Right, so and most of these people have strong immune systems. Again, they're young. The young tend to have stronger immune systems, and we're not talking about a whole stadium full of people who are unvaccinated. While there may be unvaccinated folks there are also vaccinated folks there. So, I mean, is it the best idea? No. Is it catastrophic? No.
Okay, and on that same note, Fauci, I don't know, is his star more than fallen? Last time, I think 3 weeks ago, we were talking about it on the show, coming under increased scrutiny for a little bit of, let's just say, mistruth.
Yeah, papers came out showing Fauci lied to Congress. The papers were found by The Intercept. Now, for those people who are not familiar with The Intercept, this is not some partisan hack job. The Intercept is a nonprofit organization that does reporting and does investigations, they are incredibly nonpartisan. And they're the ones that got a hold of these leaked emails that showed Fauci knew what was going on at the Wuhan lab. He helped fund the research at the Wuhan lab. He knew what they were doing.
So why is he here?
He shouldn't be here. And in fact, one of the people that Fauci quoted when he was pushing the theory that this happened in bats and then jumped species was a researcher at the lab who, prior to this, is on videotape. You can probably find it on YouTube at a symposium telling people how easy it is for them to manipulate the COVID genetic structure and manipulate the proteins.
That's another scenario where CNN and MSNBC is going to have to cover their ass, aren't they? Because they made him bigger than Elvis and Liberace and 3 others combined, correct? He was the rock star.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it was him, Andrew Cuomo, you know, we've seen what happened to him. The fact of the matter is, when the liberal media starts pushing people, you need to look forward because they tend to overlook things. It was the same thing with Biden. I mean, Hunter Biden's laptop. No, that's a non-story. We don't have to cover it. The accusations of rape by Biden's aide. No, she's not believable. We don't have to cover it. You know, they cover for their people.
Yes, unlike the Republicans who don't do such a great job. Now, speaking of talent or lack thereof, we have Gavin Newsom, who I heard this on a TV broadcast. It was fantastic. He looks like something out of Central Casting for the president of the, was that movie with Michael Douglas, The President or whatever it was called? Yeah. And, he's a good-looking guy and, tall, all of the above. A complete moron.
Now, Newsom has been a disaster for California. People are fleeing the state. They have a huge homeless problem, a huge unemployment problem. The state's best days are clearly behind it if this is the direction they keep going in. But the liberal elite, especially in Hollywood, they're circling the wagons around him because they are terrified of getting a Republican governor. Oh my God, how terrible that would be.
No, you nailed it though. Good for 90% of the population of California, bad for 10 of the out-of-touch Hollywood and high-tech elites. Am I not correct?
Absolutely. And I mean, this recall election is such a sham because, first of all, absentee ballots have been sent to every California voter. Now, a number of these ballots have already been found in the car of a convicted felon. So we know there's problems with the ballots. Second of all,
what's that? I'm sorry?
We know there's problems with the ballots. These absentee ballots were found in the car of a convicted felon.
Yeah, unfortunately, Newsom was looking like he was in trouble, even though he's totally incompetent and unpolished. Because anytime he's under the microscope, he freaks out. Because he's never really done anything in his life in terms of working for a real company or whatever. He's just a silver spoon loser, really, essentially. But it looks like the still will hold on, unfortunately, for us and for California.
What amazes me about this, and it shows the stupidity of the California liberals, is that they have been attacking Larry Elder, an African American, as being a racist and a white supremacist. And the idiot liberals are falling for it.
No, it boggles the mind. If you're not on their side, it's all BS about how their affinity for black people, for Jews. As long as you play the game with them, yeah, you're on the team. Once you stray off the reservation, you're done. So, unfortunately, I had high hopes, but it doesn't look like Larry Elder's going to pull it off, unfortunately, for Californians and for Americans. Switching gears a bit, we have Manchin, who looks like he's not going to support the $3.5 trillion boondoggle, but only with the $1 trillion. I did read an article that was probing the fact or exploring the fact that there may be others, obviously not in the Senate. Of course, Blumenthal would never do that, act in his own or the best interests of Connecticut, but others maybe not in districts that are more leaning towards the red, may not go along with Biden's agenda. If he doesn't get things going very quickly, he's dead in the water. Your comments?
Yeah, Manchin wrote an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal, and he basically said point blank, he is not going to vote for reconciliation. He is not going to vote for this $3.5 trillion boondoggle. And yeah, with it, that basically means it's dead in the Senate. With that, more moderate Democrats in the House are coming forward and going, no, we can't support spending this right now. So now it looks like they don't even have the votes to get it past the House. So this whole thing is a wish list for the radical left. But with Biden being so weak, people are no longer willing to just go along with what's coming down. So you're seeing Democrats go, no, we can't vote for this. You have to make this something that's actually valuable. And there's almost nothing of value in that $3.5 trillion bill.
Most irresponsible piece. We're already in a high inflation environment. We're already $20 trillion in debt. This is, Nancy Pelosi, does she really ever have the best interests of this country in her mind? Or is it all about expanding the liberal base?
It's all about expanding the liberal base. And the one thing, and I think this is something that's in the back of the minds of the moderate Democrats, is that let's assume that this wish list passes. Aside from the ridiculous amount of debt it's going to take on, the same administration that just screwed up Afghanistan is going to be responsible for implementing it. Do you really believe they're going to be able to implement anything well? You're handing $3.5 trillion in spending to a bunch of morons.
100% agree. Last question on this issue. Manchin, where does he go? I mean, he's West Virginia, pretty conservative. Does he have a place in the Democratic Party, or does he bolt? Or does he get more limelight by staying where he's staying?
I think he stays where he is because he is going to get a lot more attention as the lone Democrat in the Senate holding out rather than just another Republican. But he knows his constituents. West Virginia went heavily for Trump. It is not a blue state by any stretch of the imagination. And his constituents don't want all of this spending, but more importantly, that $3.5 trillion bill is specifically designed to cripple the economy of West Virginia. West Virginia is coal country. This Green New Deal will take away their jobs, not replace them with anything, and decimate West Virginia's economy.
Well, that's one of our first discussion points when we talk about the transformation. I don't know if he ever was nice or, lunch pail Joe and all that crap, but he's a very vindictive, spiteful, and uncaring person. When he cut the Keystone Pipeline, he goes, well, they can get another job. How out of another $100,000 job, so I'm sure he doesn't really care about the West Virginia coal miners. There is the abortion bill in Texas, according to Dick Morse, again, a flawed messenger, but it does have some good insights from time to time. Thinks it's a net negative for the Republican Party. Your thoughts?
Oh, this was the dumbest thing the Texas legislature could have done. First of all, I honestly don't believe there's any way this law survives a court challenge, especially with the part where they're essentially deputizing the citizens to rat out people. There's no
Yeah.
way the law survives the court. But what it did was energize the liberal left. And, oh, they're coming for our abortion rights. We have to fight them. You know, this was an absolute failure by Texas. It's a terrible bill, and the heartbeat um, metric that they're using, and they say 6 weeks. Guess what? The vast majority of women don't find out they're pregnant until past 6 weeks. So there's no
It
way.
was an
There's no
unforced era. As you said, Dr. Lopkin plays right into the hands, right at a time where Republicans, conservatives have all the momentum, and rightfully so. Republicans, and here we go in Texas, shoot themselves in the foot. Before we get to a lighter note, in Biden's plummeting poll numbers, which is around 35% with independents, excuse me, not very good. Also, it seems like, again, talk about a self-inflicting wound. Because of him, if he wasn't around, the economy would be booming. But there's signs now that there may be weakening. I think that would further affect his poll numbers, but nothing really worth discussing there. But I'd like to leave on a more lighter note, although there's a serious underpinning to it. I was bored, and I was watching TV over the weekend. There was really nothing on. I was watching some baseball games. But I happened to flick on CFL, Canadian Football League, on ESPN. And number one, from a marketing standpoint, I think ESPN should do more with it because I don't think it costs a lot for that programming. And I think it's a very enjoyable game. To some ways harkens back to like the NFL of the 1960s. These people are playing for, in the 1960s, by the way, for those who weren't around, some NFL players had part-time jobs in the off season and they played their hearts out. It wasn't all this, social justice, yada, yada, yada. But, they really play hard. And it was a very enjoyable game. I said, I think ESPN should do more with it. But I also thought there was a serious side to it because it was in Western Canada. And you look at the fans. I mean, I can't read their minds. It seems like they're kind of blue collar, conservative. I think that's a more conservative part of the state. Yet they're led in Ottawa by another bonehead, correct?
Yeah, the split in Canada has become very interesting. First of all, you have to remember that Canada, up until at least a few weeks ago, was the last time I spoke to somebody from Canada. They were still in severe lockdown like we were at the beginning of the pandemic. So they have not loosened too many of their regulations. They are requiring a vaccine passport. And businesses in Vancouver have banded together and said, we are not going to check vaccine passports. We are not participating in this mandate. So there is, just as there's a split in America, there's a split in Canada. And in regards to the CFL, yeah, for those of you who have not watched international sports, you really should. The Canadian Football League is very entertaining. The rules are a little different. ESPN also has Korean and Japanese baseball, which is absolutely entertaining. The only problem is it's on at like 4 a.m. because of time differences. But foreign players playing what are essentially our sports, they've got it right. They're not getting these $1 million salaries. They're not worried about woke bullshit. They're there for the game.
And it shows. It's not anything reading between the lines. You get these people, they're adamant and enthusiastic about playing. The fans love it. It's not all corporatized as well. NFL is such a suit game. You got to wear socks that are 3 inches high, blah, blah, blah. These guys are having fun. And you know something? Be careful for the unintended consequences of an NBA. Someone told me that years ago. The NFL, it's glory is based in previous times where it had authentic players, Dick Butkus, all these other people, right? The game was fun and exciting. The NFL is successful in spite of themselves. Last thought.
No, that's absolutely true. And at this point, that goes for all of the professional leagues. It is absolutely amazing how their marketing, one, is very focused, and two, focused not on their customers.
It's amazing. Well, Dr. Lopkin, another good edition, great edition of Carnivore Bites. We're gaining momentum, and we're heard almost everywhere, aren't we?
Yes, we are. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and thank our listeners.
We'll see you next week.